truth. Bring it on.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth? I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
And welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Proudly on. Say it with me now. A-L-R Talk. What a great prayer. I love that guy. Yeah. Pastor Aaron Free. Extraordinary man, and we are so blessed to have him every Thursday. He gets 2 segments. That's right. Locked in. And it's still not enough time, obviously. Want to welcome you if you're just joining the network of AFR Talk, in the sense that you've just picked up the show and maybe you haven't heard other folks on the network yet, other great shows. Like the show before mine, which would be Washington Watch with Tony Perkins. As Ed Smith pointed out in the news, and Chad Groening. I mean, you got news at the top of every hour. Don't you just love it? American Family News, onenewsnow.com. We're going to be talking about the economy. Boring. It's never boring when it impacts how you're going to be able to, if you're going to be able to, in the sense of the value of our money. We need to be informed on this, how decisions are being made about it. I love how Washington always says, we're going to go to the kitchen table. Well, you know what? Kitchen table, you're actually making decisions like that? Because my kitchen doesn't have a printing press. Gentle, not so gentle Ben. Well, I guess he is gentle Ben. Continuing QE forever, as Dan the Man Celia coined that expression. You can check out Dan the Man right after Sandy Rios in the morning. And then you have Tim and Eddie V, Kevin McCullough with AFA Today. Moving right into the B-Man. And Pastor Bert Harper and Alec McFarland, Dr. Alec McFarland, exploring the Word. And then, as I mentioned, woo-woo, Tony Perkins, Washington Watch. It's a great place to be, and I love it. So, lock it in, morning to night. Now, I am going to ask you to go with me on a journey. Love, excited and new. What are you saying? No, it actually is about love, though. And it's about the George Zimmerman trial. You see, I believe, and I know you know this, and I believe you know it too, and I believe you believe it too, that God created us unique, knew us in our mother's womb, has a plan for each and every one of us. And how awesome is that? Just think about that, because you know what the enemy wants to do? Wants you to forget it. Wants you to look at people not as individuals, but as groups, and groups that have been characterized in one way or another, and wants to divide us, not to evaluate, not to use our powers of intellect and reason. And as we are looking at the George Zimmerman trial, we've seen a lot of ginning up of racial animosity by race hustlers, and the media baking in a narrative of the death of Trayvon Martin, showing from the photos to the not publishing of photos to the editing of the phone call that was made by George Zimmerman, to changing Hispanic to white Hispanic, whatever. So I just ask that we do what would be respecting God, which is look at each and every person not as a color, but rather an individual in God's creation. I know how that sounds, but I also know how that sounds and what it means. The media has been dividing in this country. The mainstream media, the alphabet soup networks, have played into a narrative. Ideologically, it supports their agenda. Not conspiratorial, but at times it is. And even Juan Williams of Fox News recognized this, formerly of NPR, till he got out of line with NPR. At least NPR thought so. Yeah, Juan's a good guy. I disagree with him on a whole host of things, and I get angry at his opinions sometimes, but I appreciate him nonetheless. Here's Juan Williams commenting on the media's divisiveness and how it encouraged and attempted to divide a nation. Roll it.
Well, I think it's race, and I think it's actually not in the trial, but it's in us as the American people, because remember, the media initially libeled Mr. Zimmerman by making it out to be this was some white guy who attacked this black teenager with a hoodie and all that. And then it turns out, well, he might have been, in fact, a neighborhood watch guy who was very concerned and profiling. That's possible, but it's not necessarily racial because, in fact, he has some Hispanic background alike. What concerns me in this is I think the fascination with the American mind has forced it so that now conservatives say they're pro-Zimmerman, liberals say they're pro-Martin, and I'm thinking, wait a second, so it's black and white, and I just think it's sort of the most primitive, low-level of racial division that's being played on by media.
You're just disturbed by that?
Well, I think it fuels that kind of racial anger and misunderstanding and misrepresentation.
We have our Department of Justice encouraging this division. Check out the interview I did last night with Hans von Spakovsky on that issue. And it has created an environment where Zimmerman's lawyer, Mark O'Mara, said this about his client's safety if he were to be acquitted. Roll it.
Well, first of all, my client will never be safe because there are a percentage of the population who are angry, they're upset, and they may well take it out on him. So he'll never be safe. My hope is that the system that is better than any other in the country, and in the world, is working. And I think that anybody who pays attention to the facts of this case, listens to the evidence, will not leave that courtroom thinking that George Zimmerman is guilty of anything. And if a jury agrees, they should not and cannot be frustrated with the outcome because the state's put on a good case, we put on a good case, everything that should get out to this jury has been out, and quite honestly, a lot of what doesn't necessarily need to get out to the jury has been kept from them. And if they decide on the facts of the case, we as a society, black, white, everybody need to look at this case and say justice was in fact accomplished here because a fair trial was held. Those who refuse to listen to that, they're not going to listen to me or you or sensibilities at all anyway. They're going to stay.
What's most concerning, arguably, is the fact that we have our Attorney General teaming with the likes of Al Sharpton and the National Action Network and using our government that has abandoned its race-neutral policy to promote division and protest and what looks to be like it is headed to a place of unrest. I have no tolerance for rioters. I don't. I would have a very clear signal of security, and I don't believe in tolerating violence. Some people would say, oh, that is an overreach, and you'd probably violate civil liberties. No, I would actually uphold civil liberties and protect the peace by not allowing thugs to engage in criminal activity. I'm also a huge believer in the Second Amendment for all, in the sense that what we saw in L.A. and Korean shop owners. But what do I pray? I pray that people look at each other as individuals. I pray that the race hustlers that desire the type of violence that we've seen in the past based on a false narrative are held to account by the mainstream media and by those on the left who may agree with certain economic policies or otherwise, but reject this thuggery. I do not believe in vigilante justice. I believe in the rule of law. And I think you do too. So let's pray for that and pray for true justice in the courtroom based on substance of evidence. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We got a lot of more on the flip side. AFR Talk.